What's the weirdest rule you had in your home growing up? Story 1. My dad made up a rule to stop my big brother from asking about getting a dog every 10 seconds. We had neighbors on both sides who had dogs, so the rule was that only every other house could have a dog. My brother believed it for a long time. Story 2. I wasn't allowed to put sugar in my tea because my mom told me that when you go to prison, they don't let you have sugar, making a prison that much harder. Story 3. When I hit high school and got my first off, my dad made a rule. If I wanted to get laid, just tell him, and he'd leave the house for as long as I needed, but only if I agreed to do the same when his girlfriend came over. Story 4. My dad was a periodontist. He had me lay on the bathroom counter every night while he did a dental exam and brushed my teeth for me. Until I was 12. Any friends who stayed over had to be subjected to the same treatment, full-on dental inspections every night. Story 5. I could only buy things if I were buying them for a birthday or Christmas gift for somebody else. Mind you, this was my own money I earned from my job. My mom knew how long it took to get home from school, so if I stopped at the store, she knew, and I'd be in trouble. Story 6. We were not allowed to use the front door, ever. There was a metal screen on it and a deadbolt that needed a key for either side. My stepdad kept that key, and even visitors had to go to the back through the side gate. My stepdad told us that only cops used the front door. Anyone who came to the front was an automatic suspect of them. We were never to answer the door to strangers for this reason. All of our friends' visitors were to go through the back. Story 7. I wasn't allowed to wear my hat backward. My dad thought it was a gang thing. Mind you, this was in rural Wisconsin in the 90s. My parents are wonderful people, but they might not have understood the world well then. Story 8. I was never allowed to leave a drink in the car because, according to my mother, someone could poison it. She's always been overly paranoid about safety, but that is my favorite. Story 9. I wasn't allowed to put any personal touches on my room. No posters, paint, colors, pictures of my friends, or any choices, not even my comforter. It was all decorated to my mother's specifications. Story 10. My mom had us go to public school in the city she worked in for a while and used my stepdad's business address, but she was so scared about being caught that we weren't allowed to have friends. This lasted for 6 years. Story 11. I wasn't allowed to watch anything with a black person in a prominent role. My dad was racist, so I missed everything from That's So Raven to Fresh Prince. Even Dora got a hard pass. Story 12. I couldn't turn the TV channel. I couldn't change the channel, even if my father were napping on a Sunday. I guess I can't complain. I went outside a lot with nothing to watch. Story 13. We were not allowed to whistle at night. I was told you'd hear one back from someone who isn't there. Clarification. My mother is Native American, so we have a few superstitions like that. House isn't haunted. The parents don't have schizophrenia. Just mild superstition. Story 14. My mom didn't let me watch Wishbone because in one episode she walked in and they were burning a witch, and she didn't want me to watch a violent and disgusting show while I was so young. Story 15. My mother suffered from migraines and couldn't tolerate light, so the house was shrouded in darkness. We used candles and kerosene lanterns. Now I turn on every single light in my house every morning to start my day. I still crave light after all this time. It hurts me not to have it. Story 16. At my friend's house, they had a no pizza balling rule. There were 3 teenage brothers, and when they ordered pizzas, at least a couple prominent, tempers flared quickly when people would try to grab as many slices as they could. The first rule was that you couldn't have more than one slice at a time, and you could grab another once you had the last bite in your mouth. But one of the brothers quickly figured out that if you ball up a slice, he could fit it in his mouth and grab another. Hence, no pizza balling. Story 17. I wasn't allowed to eat my mom's cheese and crackers. So when I went to my wife's house, her mom had some, and my sister-in-laws and wife were eating them. So they offered me some, and I told them I'm not allowed. They were so confused. Story 18. My phone conversations had to be 5 minutes or less. My old-school father firmly believed that the phone was intended for business purposes, not social. This was a rule in place until his death when I was 15. Story 19. My mom wouldn't let me wear anything camo. I asked her why, and she said it was too aggressive. She also wouldn't let me wear anything with even a slight stain on it because she said it made me look homeless. Story 20. My dad allowed me a bed, 5 outfits, hygiene products, and a Bible. That's it. His wife would make my sister and I sit on towels on the couch because we smelled like shit. Story 21. That we were only allowed to watch once per year. We watched them at Christmas time and would get in trouble if we watched them at any other time of the year. They weren't Christmas movies. For example, one was The Wizard of Oz. My dad didn't want us to get sick of them, so they had to stay special. Story 22. We weren't allowed to watch sex scenes even if they didn't contain nudity, but we were still present while it was taking place. We just had to cover our eyes and be told when it was okay to look again, so we still heard the moaning and the banging, but didn't know what was happening. Story 23. We were forced to wear socks during winter. My feet were always too hot and sweaty. My parents refused that because their feet got cold. If we didn't wear socks, we had to stand outside cold without socks on. Story 24. My mom had particular rules for how and when we were allowed to use all the towels in the house. God help you if you dry off the counter with a hand towel or a dish towel instead of a wash towel. Story 25. I am not allowed to say, I forgot. Usually would end up with you in deeper crap than before. Instead, they believe that everyone in the family should have the memory of an elephant. This sucks for me because I'm pretty forgetful. Story 26. Couldn't leave the house until my mom made sure everything was powered off. She was checking anything with a power cord or wall socket, and most of the appliances and sockets hadn't been used in years, yet she still had to check. Usually took us 30 minutes to leave because of it. Story 27. My mom had a rule that we could pick any cereal we wanted as long as it was 12 grams of sugar per serving, which made me realize all the good cereals are 13. One day, I and my brother found out Cinnamon Toast Crunch was only 10 grams of sugar, and she reluctantly bought it for us. We picked it up every week for like a year, and she finally succumbed and lifted the restriction. Story 28. I wasn't allowed to play with my toys. Instead, my mother collected toys and kept them on display in my room. Only I could never touch them. Story 29. We were not allowed to chew our food audibly if we were eating at the dinner table as a family. Even if your mouth is closed, you cannot make even the slightest crunch or slosh. My father hated that sound and would always let us know with the "I can fucking hear you" with that daunting dad grumble. Story 30. We had to have family meetings on Sunday, and my parents would publicly shame each of us kids for all the bad shit we did that week. It was funny until it was your turn to get humiliated. LOL. There were 5 of us kids, so the meetings lasted for hours sometimes. Story 31. In our house, growing up, we weren't allowed to eat something that my mom had just bought from the shops. There was an unspecified cooling off time where you weren't allowed to touch it. So if you did, she would say, "I've just bought that. You can't eat it." Story 32. We had to take our shoes to our bedroom when we entered the house. Good rule, but even if we were going to get a ball glove, we had to take our shoes with us. One time I came in and did not see my stepdad, so I ran to my bedroom, got what I needed, then ran back out. My shoes were gone. I had to go almost a month without my only pair of shoes. Story 33. After using a dish, we were required to place it in the DDZ, Dirty Dishes Zone. This area was next to the sink, marked and labeled with tape on the counter. If your dirty dish was slightly across the tape, you weren't following the rule. Story 34. We weren't allowed to call our parents he or she. Always had to say mom and dad. English is my parents' second language, so it translated disrespectively into their first language. I also wasn't allowed to say hey to them as a greeting. It was always seen as disrespectful.